Imagine seeing someone forcing your daughter, your granddaughter, to eat spoiled food. Yes, that's what you heard. That's what I witnessed. I just went to the company cafeteria to drop off a sweater my granddaughter had forgotten. When I opened that door, the smell of rotten food hit me first. Then I heard laughter. And then I saw her, my granddaughter, sitting at the table, shaking, while the manager placed a plate of spoiled food in front of her and ordered her to eat it while all her coworkers were forced to watch. At 95 years old, I swear, something inside me snapped, and what I did next ended up on the front page of newspapers across Canada. But to understand how I got to that point, I need to go back to the beginning of that day. I woke up at 6 in the morning, like I always do. My apartment in Toronto is small but cozy. Since my husband died 20 years ago, I've learned to live with loneliness. The pension I receive barely covers the bills, but I've never complained. Working my whole life as a seamstress taught me that dignity has no price. That morning felt different. A weight in my chest. An anxiety I couldn't explain. I looked out the window and saw the sun rising over the rooftops of my neighborhood in Little Italy. Everything seemed normal, but I knew it wasn't. My granddaughter Emily is everything to me. After her mother, my only daughter, died in a car accident 10 years ago, I took on the responsibility of raising her. Emily was only 15 at the time. We created a bond that goes beyond blood. She's my reason for waking up every day. Emily lives in an apartment 3 blocks from mine. She works at a large industrial food company on the outskirts of Toronto, near the industrial park in It's hard work in the packaging sector, but she never complains. She always says she's grateful to have a job in difficult times. That morning, while preparing my coffee and toast with butter and jam, I saw Emily's sweater hanging on my coat rack. She'd forgotten it the day before when she came for dinner. It was cold outside and I knew she'd need it. The temperature had dropped to -5 degrees overnight. Typical for a Toronto November. I decided to take it to her. But something told me I should also prepare her something to eat. Emily always comments that the company food isn't good. So I made butter tarts, her favorite. The recipe I learned from my own grandmother decades ago. I packed them carefully in a container, along with some aged cheddar cheese and crackers. I left home around 9. The bus to the industrial park took about 40 minutes. I sat by the window and watched the city wake up. Toronto has always been my home. I knew every street, every corner. But that day, even the familiar city seemed strange to me. When I arrived at the company, a huge gray building with the name Northern Foods Inc. in red letters, I felt the weight in my chest increase. There was something in the air, something bad. At reception, a young girl in a blue uniform looked at me surprised. "Are you here to see someone, ma'am?" "My granddaughter, Emily Thompson. She works in packaging. I'm just dropping off her sweater." The receptionist hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "You can go in. The cafeteria is at the end of the hallway, to the left." I walked down the long, narrow corridor. The walls were white and cold. I could hear the noise of machines in the background, a constant hum that made me nervous. Some employees passed by me in a hurry, heads down, not looking at me. Then I started to notice it. The whispers. 2 women in white coats were talking quietly near a door. "Poor girl. I can't believe Michael would go this far. He's a monster." I stopped and looked at them. One of them saw me and elbowed the other. They both went quiet immediately and walked away quickly. Poor girl, Michael, what were they talking about? My heart started racing faster. I kept walking, but now my heart was beating faster. When I got close to the cafeteria, I saw more employees gathered outside the door. Some were looking inside with expressions of horror. Others were shaking their heads. I approached and an older woman, about 60 years old, tried to stop me. "Don't go in now, ma'am, please." "Why? What's happening?" "Please, it's better if you don't go in." But I'd already heard the voice. A man's voice, loud, authoritative, shouting from inside the cafeteria. "This is what you're serving badly to customers. Then eat it." I gently but firmly pushed the woman aside and opened the door just a crack. What I saw froze my blood. The cafeteria was packed, There must have been 30 or 40 workers sitting at tables, all in absolute silence. And in the center, under fluorescent lights that gave everything a sickly tone, was my granddaughter Emily. She was sitting in a chair, her back rigid, her hands trembling on her lap. Her face was pale, almost gray. She had tears running down her cheeks, but she wasn't making any sound. She seemed petrified. In front of her was a tall man, about 50 years old, with hair slicked back, and a white shirt with the company logo. He had an expression of absolute contempt on his face. In his hands he held a white plate, and on that plate was food. But not just any food. Even from the door I could see something was wrong. The chicken had a greenish color. The rice was clumped and dark. And the smell, my God, the smell coming from that plate was nauseating. Rotten food, completely spoiled. The man, who I later learned was named Michael Patterson and was the operations manager, placed the plate in front of Emily with a sharp bang on the table. "You're responsible for quality control in packaging, right, Emily?" Emily barely nodded, unable to speak. "And this chicken was in one of the batches you approved yesterday. A customer called this morning saying his family got food poisoning. Do you know what that means for the company?" Emily tried to speak, her voice barely a whisper. "I followed all the protocols, Mr. Patterson. I checked the dates, the temperatures, lies. If you'd done your job, this wouldn't have happened. So now you're going to understand what it's like to serve garbage to people." Michael pushed the plate closer to Emily. "Eat." The workers watched in silence. Some had expressions of horror, others of pity. But nobody said anything. Nobody moved. Emily shook her head, tears falling faster. "Please, Mr. Patterson. It's spoiled. I can't." "I said eat. If it's good enough for our customers, it's good enough for you." Michael took the fork and put it in Emily's trembling hand. She held it as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Everyone's going to stay here until you finish that plate. If you don't eat, everyone loses their lunch break, and it'll be your fault." Emily looked around the cafeteria. She saw the faces of her coworkers. Some looked away, unable to hold her gaze. She sobbed once, a broken and desperate sound. Then, with her hand shaking violently, she brought the fork close to the plate and stuck it into a piece of the greenish chicken. I'd seen enough. Something inside me, something that had been sleeping for years, woke up. It wasn't just anger. It was an ancestral fury. The fury of a woman who had endured injustices all her life, who had seen her daughter die, who had raised her granddaughter with sacrifice and love. And now I saw that granddaughter, my Emily, being humiliated in the most cruel way imaginable. I pushed the door hard. The bang echoed throughout the cafeteria like a gunshot. "Emily," my voice, which is normally soft and tired, came out like thunder. All eyes turned to me. Emily dropped the fork, which fell to the floor with a metallic clink. "Grandma?" I walked toward the center of the cafeteria. My 95-year-old legs had never felt stronger. My cane hit the floor with each step, marking my advance like a war drum. Have you ever seen someone you love being treated like this? Tell me in the comments what you would do. Michael looked at me with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Who are you? This is a private company meeting. Visitors aren't allowed." I stopped in front of him. Although he was much taller than me, I didn't feel small. I looked directly into his eyes. "I'm Emily's grandmother. And what I won't allow is for you to abuse my family." The silence in the cafeteria was absolute. I could hear Emily's labored breathing behind me. Michael tried to regain his authority. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Your granddaughter made a serious mistake that could cost the company millions. She's being disciplined according to our internal policies." Disciplined? By forcing her to eat rotten food in front of everyone like she's an animal. I raised my cane and banged it against the table so hard the plate jumped. Some workers startled. "Is this how you run this company? By humiliating young employees, forcing them to poison themselves to teach them a lesson?" Michael took a step back. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his face. "You don't understand how things work here." "Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that you're an abuser." A coward who uses his power to destroy people who can't defend themselves. I turned to the workers filling the cafeteria. And you? Are you going to sit there while this happens? Are you all accomplices to this barbarity? Some looked down. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But nobody spoke. Michael tried to take control again. If you don't leave right now, I'll call security. Call them, and when they arrive, I'll explain exactly what I've seen here. Better yet. I took my cell phone out of my purse. Emily had given it to me last year and taught me how to use it. I raised the camera and pointed it directly at Michael and the plate of rotten food. I'm going to record this. I'm going to send this to the newspapers, to television, to anyone who wants to see what kind of monsters run this company. Michael went pale. You can't do that. It's private property. It's what? It's illegal to document abuse. It's illegal to defend my granddaughter. I started recording, moving the camera around the entire cafeteria. The scared workers, the plate of green food, Michael's face getting redder with rage and helplessness. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to call the labor board. I'm going to call health inspection. Because if this is the food you're forcing employees to eat, I wonder what you're selling to customers. Then a voice emerged from the back of the cafeteria. An older man, about 50 years old, in a worker's uniform, stood up. She's right, ma'am. This happens almost every day. Michael turned to him with fury. Shut your mouth, Tom, or you're fired. But it was too late. Another worker stood up, a young woman with glasses. He made me clean the bathrooms with my bare hands when I didn't do it to his liking. And then it was like a dam broke. More voices started to emerge. He made me go without pay for 3 weeks for being 5 minutes late. He made my brother work 12 hours straight without a break. He took away my vacation days because I complained about safety conditions. The cafeteria filled with voices, stories of abuse, years of silent humiliation. Emily got up from her chair and ran to me, hugging me tightly. She was shaking like a leaf. Grandma, you shouldn't be here. Something's going to happen to you. Nothing's going to happen to me, sweetheart. I'm not the one who should be afraid anymore. Michael was surrounded now. The workers had stood up and were looking at him with years of contained rage in their eyes. He was slowly backing toward the wall. All of you are fired. All of you will see who's fired. I dialed the emergency number on my phone. When they answered, I spoke clearly and loudly so everyone could hear. Good afternoon. I'm at Northern Foods Inc., in the Etobicoke Industrial Park. I need you to send the police and a health inspector. There's a case of serious workplace abuse happening here and possibly food poisoning. Michael slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. His face had gone from red to white. He knew his world had just collapsed. I hugged Emily tighter. She was crying on my shoulder, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. They were tears of relief. What would you do if you saw this happening to someone you love? Drop a comment below. The next few minutes were chaos. More workers came out from other areas of the factory when they heard the commotion. The receptionist appeared with 2 security guards who didn't know what to do. I kept recording everything with my phone. When the police arrived, 20 minutes later, the cafeteria looked like a people's court. Michael was still on the floor, now surrounded by furious workers, shouting accusations at him. Emily was sitting, drinking water, still trembling but calmer. A police officer about 40 years old approached me. Are you the one who called, ma'am? Yes, officer. My name is Catherine Williams, and this. I showed him the video on my phone. His eyes widened as he watched the images of the plate of rotten food, of Michael forcing Emily to eat, of my confrontation. I'm going to need you to send me that video, Mrs. Williams. This is very serious. Of course. But I also need you to arrest that man. I pointed at Michael, who was now being helped up by the security guards. For now we can only question him. But with this evidence and the testimonies, I can assure you there will be consequences. More people arrived. Health inspectors with briefcases and sampling equipment. Journalists, because someone had called the local newspaper. The news was spreading fast. A health inspector approached the plate of food that was still on the table. He put on latex gloves and took samples, sealing them in plastic bags. "Ma'am, did your granddaughter eat any of this?" "No, I arrived just in time, thank goodness. From the smell and appearance, this could cause serious poisoning. We're going to analyze everything in the lab." Emily approached the inspector. "I approved that batch yesterday. I checked all the storage temperatures and they were within parameters. I don't understand how it spoiled so fast." The inspector looked at the package labels. "What temperature was it stored at?" 4 degrees Celsius in cold storage unit 3. The inspector frowned. "I'm going to need to check that unit. If the temperature was correct and this spoiled in less than 24 hours, there's a serious contamination problem at the source." Michael, who was being questioned by the police, shouted from across the cafeteria. "Cold storage 3 has been malfunctioning for weeks. I reported the problem to maintenance." Everyone turned to him. One of the workers, Tom, who had been the first to speak, stepped forward. "Liar, I work in maintenance. We never received any report about cold storage 3. What we do know is that you ordered the repair budget cut 3 months ago to save costs." The inspector turned to the police. "This isn't just workplace abuse anymore. We're talking about criminal negligence. If that unit has been malfunctioning and contaminated food has been sold." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. We all understood the gravity of the situation. The journalists started asking questions. A young reporter from CTV News approached me with a microphone. "Mrs. Williams, can you tell us what happened here today?" I looked at the camera. I thought about all the elderly people like me, all the workers who suffer in silence, all the Emilys in the world who are humiliated by abusive bosses. What happened here today is that a coward tried to destroy my granddaughter. He tried to humiliate her, force her to eat rotten food to teach her a lesson. But what he didn't know is that Canadian grandmothers don't stay quiet when someone abuses our family. And I hope this serves as a warning to all abusive bosses in this country. You may have the power. You may have the titles, but you'll never have the right to destroy a worker's dignity." The reporter seemed moved. "And what's going to happen now?" "Now we're going to make sure justice is done. That this company is investigated from top to bottom. That all those responsible pay for what they've done. And that my granddaughter gets back the dignity they tried to take from her." Emily stood beside me and took my hand. The reporter asked her, "Emily, how do you feel now?" My granddaughter looked at the camera, eyes still red but with new determination in her voice. "I feel lucky. Lucky to have a grandmother like mine. And I want other workers to know they're not alone. That they don't have to put up with abuse. That there are people who will fight for them." The workers surrounding us started to applaud. It was a slow applause at first, but it grew until it filled the entire cafeteria. Some were crying, others were smiling for the first time in who knows how long. At that moment, a man in a gray suit arrived, accompanied by 2 lawyers. It was the company's CEO, Robert Morrison. He looked clearly nervous. He approached me with his hands extended in a conciliatory gesture. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Robert Morrison, CEO. I deeply regret what has happened. I assure you this doesn't represent our company's values." I looked at him without accepting his hand. "It doesn't? Then explain to me how your manager has been abusing workers for years and you knew nothing about it." Morrison swallowed hard. "We're going to open an immediate internal investigation. Mr. Patterson will be suspended in the meantime." Suspended? He should be fired and in jail. "I understand your anger. Allow me to offer you compensation for—" "I don't want your money. I want justice. I want all the workers who have been abused to receive a public apology. I want all the cold storage units repaired and safety conditions improved. I want an external mediator hired to review all this company's labor practices." Morrison looked at his lawyers, who nodded nervously. "That can be arranged. And I want my granddaughter to keep her job, with a public apology from this company, and never suffer any kind of retaliation again. Of course, you have my word. Your word is worth nothing. I want everything in writing, signed before a notary, and with these journalists as witnesses." The CTV News reporter smiled and raised her camera. "All of this is being recorded live. Mr. Morrison. The CEO seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Agreed. We'll do everything you ask. The workers applauded again. Some came over to hug me, to thank me. An older woman, who had worked in cleaning for 30 years, had tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Catherine. Thank you for having the courage we didn't have. I took her hands. Courage isn't not being afraid. Courage is acting despite fear. And now all of you have to keep being brave. Don't let this be forgotten. But then Emily started to sway. I caught her just before she fell to the floor. Emily, her face was pale, covered in cold sweat. Her eyes were closing. We need an ambulance. A paramedic who had arrived with the emergency services ran toward us with a medical kit. He helped Emily sit on the floor carefully. What's wrong with her? Did she eat any of that plate? No, but she's been under a lot of stress. And I think. Emily interrupted us with a weak voice. I think I ate something from yesterday's lunch. From the same batch. The paramedic looked at her with concern. We need to get her to the hospital now. It could be food poisoning. The rage flooded back through me. I looked at Morrison with a fury that made him physically step back. See what your negligence has caused. My granddaughter could die from your greed. Ma'am, I didn't know. Well, you should have known. It's your responsibility to know. The ambulance arrived minutes later. The paramedics put Emily on a stretcher. I got in with her, gripping her hand tightly. Grandma, I'm scared. Me too, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay, I promise you. As the ambulance left the industrial park with sirens blaring, I looked through the back window. I saw the crowd of workers, journalists and police still filling the parking lot. I saw the television cameras recording everything. I saw Michael being escorted to a patrol car. And I knew this was just beginning. Would you stand up for someone you love like this? Tell me in the comments. The ambulance sped through Toronto's streets. Emily was connected to an IV, with an oxygen mask over her face. The paramedic monitored her vital signs while I held her hand, praying silently. We arrived at Toronto General Hospital in less than 15 minutes. The doctors were already waiting for us in the emergency room. A young doctor in green scrubs approached quickly as they transferred Emily to an examination room. I'm Dr. Martinez. Can you tell me exactly what your granddaughter ate? I'm not sure. Something from yesterday's lunch at her company. Chicken, I think. The food was contaminated. The doctor quickly noted everything on her tablet. When did the symptoms start? Today. She fainted less than half an hour ago. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. I don't know. Emily, did you have any of that last night or this morning? Emily nodded weakly under the oxygen mask. This morning, stomach pain. I thought it was just nerves about work. Dr. Martinez looked at the nurses. Complete blood work, cultures, and I want a gastroenterologist here in 10 minutes. Possible food poisoning from Salmonella or E. coli. She turned to me with a softer expression. Ma'am, we need to run several tests on her. She's going to be fine, but I need you to wait outside while we work. I'm not leaving her alone, I understand, but it's hospital protocol. You can stay in the waiting room right next door. We'll call you as soon as we have news. I leaned over Emily and kissed her forehead. I'm going to be right here. I'm not going anywhere. Emily tried to smile, but she was too weak. The nurses wheeled her through double doors and I was left alone in the bright, sterile hospital corridor. I sat in a blue plastic chair in the waiting room. My hands were shaking. Now that the adrenaline was starting to drop, I felt the weight of my 95 years. Every bone hurt. I was exhausted, but I couldn't rest. Not yet. I took out my phone and saw I had 32 missed calls. 32. Messages from numbers I didn't know. WhatsApps that wouldn't stop coming. One of the messages was from a number I recognized. Tom, the worker who had been the first to speak up in the cafeteria. He'd given me his number before I left in the ambulance. Mrs. Catherine, it's Tom. How's Emily? We're all very worried. The police took Michael away. The inspectors have shut down 3 cold storage units. More journalists are arriving. This is huge. Please tell us how your granddaughter is. I quickly replied. They're running tests on her. Possible poisoning. Keep me informed about what's happening there. Don't let this be forgotten." His response was immediate. "We won't. We promise." During the next 2 hours, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from journalists wanting interviews. Messages from company workers telling me their own stories of abuse. A message from a labor lawyer offering his services for free. Another from a workers' rights organization. But what impacted me most was a message from a woman named Sarah, Mrs. Catherine. "You don't know me, but my brother worked at that company 3 years ago. Michael humiliated him so much he developed severe depression. He tried to commit suicide twice. He left the job but never fully recovered. Seeing what you did today gave me hope. Thank you for having the courage my brother didn't have." I read that message 3 times. Each word was like a dagger to my heart. How many lives had Michael destroyed? How many families had suffered in silence? Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Martinez came out through the double doors. "Mrs. Williams." I stood up so fast I almost fell. The doctor helped me stabilize. "Emily is stable. The preliminary tests show mild food poisoning, probably from salmonella. She was lucky. If she'd eaten more, or if treatment had been delayed, it could have been much more serious." "Can I see her?" "Yes, but she's sleeping. We've given her IV fluids and antibiotics. We want to keep her under observation for at least 24 hours." She took me to a small room on the 2nd floor. Emily was in bed, connected to several machines that beeped softly. Her color had improved a bit, but she still looked fragile. I sat in the chair next to her bed and took her hand. It was warm, a good sign. Her eyes opened slowly. "Grandma, I'm here, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." "Why are you sorry? You haven't done anything wrong." Tears started falling down her cheeks again. "I've embarrassed you. Everyone now knows what happened. Everyone thinks I'm weak, that I couldn't defend myself." I leaned closer, wiping her tears with my handkerchief. "Listen to me carefully, Emily. The shame isn't yours. The shame belongs to whoever humiliated you. You're not weak, you're a survivor. And now, thanks to your courage in speaking up, other workers will dare to as well." "My courage? Grandma, you were the one who did everything." I was just sitting there, paralyzed. Sometimes courage isn't fighting. Sometimes it's resisting, enduring, surviving another day. And when you can't fight for yourself, I'm going to fight for you. Always." Emily squeezed my hand. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You don't have to know. Because I'm always going to be here." We stayed in silence for a while, just listening to the constant beeping of the monitors. Then Emily spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "Grandma, I have to tell you something I haven't told anyone." "What is it, sweetheart?" "Michael has been doing things like this to me for months. Not as extreme as today, but he's always humiliating me. He makes me work overtime without pay. He yells at me in front of others. Once he made me clean the factory floor with my bare hands because he said the cleaners didn't do it right. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid of losing my job. Afraid nobody would believe me. And I was ashamed. Ashamed that my own grandmother, who raised me to be strong, would see that I'm so weak." The rage burned in my chest again, but I controlled it. Emily needed my love now, not my fury. "Emily, look at me. You're not weak. That monster manipulated you, made you believe you deserved that treatment. That's what abusers do. They take away your power little by little until you believe you have no choice. And now what's going to happen? Even if they don't fire me, how am I going to go back to that place?" "You're not going back. At least not until everything changes. And if it doesn't change, you'll find another job." "But Emily, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about all the workers who suffer the same thing. You have to be brave a little longer. You have to tell your whole story." "I'm scared, I know. I'm scared too. But together we're stronger than our fears." At that moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Dr. Martinez with a man about 60 years old, in a dark suit. "Mrs. Williams. This is Inspector Davis from the Labor Board." He needs to ask you and Emily some questions. The inspector was a serious-looking man but with kind eyes. He sat down and took out a notebook. Miss Thompson, I'm sorry to bother you while you're recovering, but it's important we document everything while the facts are fresh. Do you feel strong enough to talk? Emily looked at me. I nodded. She took a deep breath. Yes. For the next hour, Emily told everything. Every humiliation, every abuse, every threat. The inspector took notes constantly. Sometimes he asked for clarifications. Other times he just listened in silence with an increasingly grave expression. When Emily finished, the inspector closed his notebook. Miss Thompson, what you've told me constitutes a clear pattern of workplace harassment and abuse of power. With your testimony and that of other workers who have already started to speak up, we have a very solid case against Mr. Patterson and possibly against the company management for allowing this to continue. What's going to happen now? Emily asked. We're going to open a formal investigation. The company will be fined. Mr. Patterson will face criminal charges, and all affected workers will be entitled to compensation. And the contaminated food? I asked. The inspector sighed. That's even more serious. Health inspectors have found that 3 of the cold storage units had been operating below safe temperatures for weeks. Potentially contaminated food has been sold throughout Ontario. We're talking about thousands of people at risk. The company could face criminal charges for massive negligence. My God, Emily whispered. And there's more. We've reviewed the maintenance records. Mr. Patterson knew about the problems with the units, but ordered they not be repaired to save costs. There are emails that prove it. So he's guilty of everything, I said with satisfaction. Very guilty. And thanks to your video, Mrs. Williams, and the courage of the workers who have spoken up, he won't be able to escape this. After the inspector left, I told Emily everything that had happened while she was being examined. The messages of support. The other workers sharing their stories. The journalists wanting to cover the story. Grandma, this has become huge, I know, and it's going to get bigger, but that's good. It means change is possible. That night, while Emily slept, I went out into the hallway to stretch my legs. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something told me I should. Hello, Mrs. Williams. This is David Chen from the Fifth Estate on CBC. What do you want? We want to invite you and your granddaughter to our program. It's a national investigative program. Millions of people watch it every week. Your story deserves to be told to the whole country. I don't know, my granddaughter is sick, I understand. But Mrs. Williams, what you've exposed is the tip of the iceberg. We have reports of similar abuses in dozens of companies across Canada. Your courage could inspire thousands of workers to speak up, to demand changes, to recover their dignity. I stayed silent, thinking, let me talk to my granddaughter. If she agrees, we'll do it. Perfect. And Mrs. Williams, I just want to tell you that you're a hero. My own mother worked her whole life enduring abuses from terrible bosses. She never had the courage to speak up. Seeing what you did today made me cry. Thank you. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Hero. I wasn't a hero. I was just a grandmother defending her granddaughter. But if my story could help others, then it would be worth it. I went back to the room. Emily was awake, looking at her own phone with wide eyes. Grandma, you have to see this. She showed me her screen. It was Twitter, and there was a hashtag, the grandma who won't shut up. Thousands of messages. Tens of thousands. People from all over Canada sharing the story. The video I'd recorded had been viewed over 2 million times. There were memes with my photo banging the table with my cane. There were opinion articles in national newspapers. One tweet said, if I have half the courage of this woman when I'm 95, I'll have lived well. Another, my grandmother was like Catherine Williams. She never stayed quiet in the face of injustice. I miss her every day. And another, this is what Canada needs. Less politicians talking and more grandmas acting. Emily was looking at me with a mixture of amazement and pride. Grandma, you're famous. I don't care about being famous. I care that this serves a purpose. And it will. Look. She showed me another article. The headline read, Ministry of Labor announces deep investigation into workplace abuses in food companies following Northern Foods case. See, they're already taking action. We spent the rest of the night reading messages, watching news, responding to some journalists. Emily was tired but excited. For the first time in months, I saw hope in her eyes. The next morning, Dr. Martinez came to check on Emily. Good morning, how are you feeling? Better, much better. Excellent. This morning's tests show significant improvement. I think we can discharge you this afternoon, if you promise to rest and continue treatment with antibiotics. I promise. After breakfast, Emily received an unexpected visit. It was Tom, the maintenance worker, accompanied by 5 other co-workers from the company. Emily, we wanted to come see how you were, and bring you this. He handed her a large envelope. Emily opened it curiously. Inside was a letter signed by more than 100 company workers. Dear Emily and Mrs. Catherine, we want you to know that what you did yesterday changed our lives. For years we've suffered in silence, thinking we had no choice, but you showed us that we do, that together we're stronger. We've formed a workers' committee. We're going to demand real changes, better conditions, respect, dignity, and we're doing it inspired by your courage. Thank you. We'll always be grateful to you. Emily was crying as she read. I had tears in my eyes too. A young woman from the group, about 30 years old, approached me. Mrs. Catherine, my name is Jennifer. I work in accounting. Michael sexually harassed me. He touched me inappropriately, made comments about my body, but I was afraid to speak up. I have 2 kids to feed. I couldn't risk my job. Her voice broke. But after what you did, I went to the police. I filed a formal complaint. And 3 other women did the same. Michael isn't just a workplace abuser. He's a sexual predator. The fury invaded me again. Is the police investigating? Yes. And with all our complaints, there's enough evidence for a trial. Good. Let that monster pay for everything he's done. Tom intervened. We also want you to know that the CEO, Morrison, has been suspended. The company's board of directors has brought in a new management team. They're already implementing changes. They're repairing all the cold storage units. They've hired an external consultant to review all labor policies, and they've promised compensation for all workers who suffered abuse. And do you believe it? I asked with skepticism. Not yet, but we're going to watch them closely. And if they don't comply, we're going to do what you did. We're going to make noise. We're going to fight. That's what I want to hear. The workers stayed a while longer, sharing their own stories of abuse and their hopes for the future. When they left, Emily lay back on the bed, exhausted but happy. Grandma, do you realize what we've started? We didn't start anything. They always had that power. They just needed to see it was possible to use it. In the afternoon, when we were discharged from the hospital, there were journalists waiting at the entrance. Television cameras, photographers, dozens of them. The same CTV news reporter who had been at the factory approached. Mrs. Williams, Emily, can you tell us how you feel? Emily looked at the cameras, then looked at me. I nodded. I feel lucky. Lucky to have a grandmother who defends me. Lucky to work with coworkers who finally found their voice. And lucky that this case can help other workers across Canada realize they're not alone. And you, Mrs. Williams? I feel proud. Proud of my granddaughter for her courage in speaking up. Proud of the workers who are uniting. And determined to see justice done to the end. What message do you have for other workers who are suffering abuse? I raised my cane, the same one I'd banged on the cafeteria table. My message is simple: don't stay quiet. Speak up, report, seek help, and if you can't fight alone, find someone to fight with you. Because no job, no salary, is worth more than your dignity. Have you or someone you know experienced workplace abuse? Share your story in the comments below. You're not alone. We took a taxi back home. The streets of Toronto had never seemed so beautiful to me. The afternoon sun painted the buildings gold. The CN Tower rose majestically in the distance. My city, my home. When we arrived at my apartment, there were more surprises waiting. The entrance was full of flowers, cards and gifts left by neighbors and strangers, messages of support, drawings from children. An elderly lady from the apartment upstairs came down the stairs with difficulty to hug me. "Catherine, you're an example for all of us. My husband abused me for 40 years. I never had the courage to leave him. But seeing you, at 95 years old, still fighting, still defending what's right, makes me think that maybe it's never too late to be brave." I hugged her tightly. How many women had suffered in silence? How many untold stories? It's never too late. Your story still matters. Share it. Teach the younger generations that they don't have to suffer like we did. Inside the apartment, Emily collapsed on the sofa. I prepared chamomile tea for both of us. "Grandma, do you think everything's really going to change?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Real change takes time. But we've planted a seed. And that seed is going to grow." My phone rang again. It was David Chen from the Fifth Estate. "Mrs. Williams, have you thought about our offer?" I looked at Emily. She nodded. "Yes, we're going to do your program, but with one condition." "What's that?" "We want you to also invite other workers who have suffered abuse. We don't want this to be just about us. We want it to be about all of them." "I love the idea. We'll do it. How about next Friday? We'll be there." That night, while Emily slept in the guest room, I sat in my favorite armchair by the window. I looked at the stars over Toronto and thought about my husband, about my daughter, about all the battles I'd fought in my long life. And I knew that this battle, this fight for workers' dignity, for respect, for justice, was the most important of all, because it wasn't just for Emily. It was for all the Emilys, for all the invisible workers who keep this country running while being stepped on by those who have power. And I, Catherine Williams, an old seamstress, 95 years old, with a cane and a heart full of righteous rage, was going to make sure their voices were heard, even if it was the last thing I did. The following days were a whirlwind. Michael's trial began within months. It was one of the most publicized trials in Ontario's recent history. I was present every day, sitting in the front row with Emily beside me. Witness after witness took the stand. They recounted years of abuse, humiliations, threats, harassment. The evidence was overwhelming. The emails showing Michael knew about the defective cold storage units. The testimonies of the women he'd sexually harassed. My video, played over and over in the courtroom. The defense attorney tried to argue that Michael was simply a demanding boss, that the accusations were exaggerated. But it was a lost battle from the start. When it was my turn to testify, I told exactly what I'd seen that day. The prosecutor asked me why I had intervened. Because I saw my granddaughter being destroyed by a cruel man. And in that moment, I realized that silence was complicity. If I didn't act, I'd be as guilty as him. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned with their verdict, the courtroom was in absolute silence. Guilty, guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced Michael to 12 years in prison. He also ordered him to pay compensation to all his victims and prohibited him from working in supervisory positions for life. When we left the courthouse, a crowd of workers and supporters was waiting for us outside. They applauded. They shouted slogans. Someone had brought a giant banner with my photo that said, "Catherine's Justice." Emily hugged Jennifer. Both were crying with relief and joy. Tom raised his fist in the air in a sign of victory. And I, standing on the courthouse steps with my cane in my hand, felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope that change was possible. The following months brought more victories. The Worker Defense Office helped more than 1,000 workers in its first year. The new labor laws began to have real effect, with more companies being sanctioned for abuse. And most importantly, the national conversation had changed. Workplace abuse was no longer something people accepted in silence. In May, Emily surprised me with news. "Grandma, I'm engaged." I was speechless for a moment. Then I hugged her with tears of happiness. "Who's the lucky guy?" "His name is James." I met him at the company after everything changed. He's an engineer in the quality department. He's kind, respectful, and treats me as an equal. Then he has my blessing. The wedding was in September, 1 year after that day that changed everything. It was held in a small church in Little Italy, the neighborhood where I grew up. It was filled with workers, activists, and friends we'd made on this incredible journey. When Emily walked down the aisle in her white dress, I thought about her mother, my daughter, who couldn't be there to see her. But somehow, I felt she was present, proud of the woman her daughter had become. At the reception, they asked me to give a speech. I stood up, leaning on my cane, and looked at all the happy faces around me. A year ago, I thought my life was simple, predictable, that my days of fighting battles were over. But life had other plans. It put me in a moment, in a place, where I had to choose between silence and action, between comfort and justice, and I chose to fight. I looked at Emily and James. These two young people represent everything I've fought to achieve. A generation that doesn't accept abuse, that demands respect, that understands dignity isn't negotiable. Emily, my love, your mother would be so proud of you. I'm proud of you. Not just for how you survived, but for how you've helped others survive too. I turn to all the guests, and to all of you, who have fought your own battles, who have found your voices. I say, never forget where we came from. Never forget the pain that brought us here. Because only by remembering where we come from, can we ensure we never go back there. The room burst into applause. But I wasn't finished. And finally, I want to say something to all the abusers, to all those who use their power to destroy others. Your time is up, because now there's an army of grandmas, of workers, of ordinary people who won't stay quiet anymore. And we're going to fight until every workplace, every company, every corner of this country is a place of dignity and respect. I raised my cane in the air. For justice, for dignity, for all who dare to fight. Everyone raised their glasses and shouted in unison. For Catherine. For those who won't shut up. Now, 2 years after that day that changed everything, I sit in the same armchair where this story began. My apartment in Toronto is still small and modest. But the walls are covered with photos, thank you letters, newspaper clippings that document our journey. Emily is pregnant with her first child. She's going to make me a great-grandmother. And she promised me she's going to tell that child the story of how his great-grandmother didn't stay quiet. The Worker Defense Office now has branches in 20 Canadian cities. They've helped more than 10,000 workers, and they're training a new generation of activists to continue the work. Michael is still in prison. I've rejected all his requests for forgiveness. Some say I should be more compassionate. But I believe true compassion is with his victims, not with him. My health has deteriorated a bit. 97 years weigh heavy. But as long as I have breath in my lungs and strength in my arms to raise my cane, I'm going to keep fighting. Because I learned something important in these 2 years. You're never too old to change the world. You're never too small to make a difference. And it's never too late to stand up for what's right. Every week I still receive letters. From all over Canada. From around the world. Workers telling me their stories. Thanking me for giving them hope. For showing them that change is possible. And to each one of them I respond the same. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just a grandmother who loved her granddaughter and refused to see injustice without doing anything. And if I could do it, anyone can. Yesterday I received a message from a woman in Australia. Her boss was mistreating her and she didn't know what to do. She saw a video of mine on YouTube where I tell the story, and she decided to report. She won her case, and now she's helping other women do the same. That's what fills me most. Not the awards I've received, not the interviews, not the fame. But knowing that our story, Emily's and mine, is inspiring people thousands of miles away to not stay quiet. The sun is setting over Toronto. The buildings shine with golden light. It's beautiful. My city. My home. The place where an old woman with a cane decided enough was enough. Emily will come for dinner soon. I'll cook too for sure. We'll talk about the baby, about her plans, about the movement's next steps. And I'll remind her, as I always do, that what we started can't end with us. That it has to continue. That each generation has to fight its own battles for justice. Because in the end, that's what it means to be human. Not accepting injustice. Not staying quiet in the face of abuse. Using whatever power you have, however small, to make the world a little more dignified. And you, those listening to this story, I ask you, what would you do if you saw someone you love being humiliated? Would you stay quiet, or would you find the courage to act? I was just an old woman with a cane. But I discovered that sometimes that's enough. That true strength doesn't come from young muscles or important titles. It comes from the conviction that we all deserve dignity. From the certainty that abuse is never acceptable. From the love that drives us to protect those we love. And as long as there are people willing to fight, as long as there are voices willing to shout against injustice, as long as there are grandmas like me who refuse to stay quiet, there's hope. So I say to you, speak up, report, fight. Your age doesn't matter. Your position doesn't matter. We all have the power to change the world. We just have to have the courage to use it. Because I, Catherine Williams, an old seamstress 97 years old from Toronto, prove to you that it's never too late. You're never too old. You're never too small. And if I could do it, so can you. Don't stay quiet. Never stay quiet. Because when grandmas get angry, the world trembles. And when workers unite, tyrants fall. That's my story. That's our story. And now it's your turn to write yours. What are you going to do when you see injustice? Are you going to stay quiet? Or are you going to be like me, and grab your cane and fight? The choice is yours. But I hope, with all my heart, that you choose to fight. Because the world needs more people who won't stay quiet. More people who stand up for what's right. More people who understand that dignity isn't a privilege, it's a right. And if this old story of an old grandma can inspire even one person to find their voice, then it was all worth it. Now go, live, fight, and never ever stay quiet, because you're more powerful than you think, and the world is waiting for you to prove it. If this story inspired you, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our next story. Share your thoughts in the comments below about what you would do in this situation. Have you ever witnessed workplace abuse? Tell us your story. Together, we can make a difference and create workplaces where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video where we'll share more incredible true stories of courage and justice.